Empire Strikes Back in Lego Star Wars. So we will be starting with Chapter 1, Hoth Battle. And I'll read this opening crawl here. It is a dark time for the rebellion. Although the Death Star has been destroyed, Imperial troops have driven the rebel forces from their hidden base and pursued them across the galaxy. Evading the dreaded Imperial Starfleet, a group of freedom fighters led by Luke Skywalker has established a new secret base on the remote ice world of Hoth. The evil Lord Darth Vader, obsessed with finding young Skywalker, has dispatched thousands of remote probes into the far reaches of space. So today, we have a special addition to the gameplay. I am playing multiplayer. My brother joined me for recording this session of gameplay. So we will be tackling episode 5 cooperatively, or as cooperative as my brother and I can play together anyways. I told him we couldn't mess around too much, but we might attack each other from time to time. So, here we are on Hoth. Of course, the secret rebel base has been discovered by an Imperial probe droid, a Viper droid. And with the Empire approaching, the rebels set up a defensive perimeter. And Luke Skywalker hops into a snowspeeder. Who's his co-pilot? Is he flying with Wedge? I think he's flying with Wedge. Wedge Antilles. So here we go. Finally, with a second player, I am freed from the somewhat useless AI that mostly just wanders around and occasionally draws enemy fire. So this is a vehicle level, and it will involve us using these bombs pretty frequently. These AT-ATs, you can use your tow cable, just like in the movies, to snare their legs and pull them down. And at this point we didn't put together that you actually need to finish them off with a bomb, so we will have to go and do that now. I do think Lego Star Wars is, or the Lego games in general, are a bit more fun with another player. They're perfectly enjoyable solo, but I don't know, it feels like it's missing something a little bit if you don't have a buddy filling in that player 2 slot. So I played these games with my brother when we were younger. I have a handful of brothers, but this one that I'm playing with is the one that is closest in age to me. And so we tended to play together more sort of stuff, I guess. But this brother of mine, we would play together pretty often. Not just video games, but, play together in general. And we would do like, I don't know, imagination, playing with our imaginations. We'd go outside and tell stories and sort of imagine ourselves as characters in these various stories that we would make up, and oftentimes we would do that while hopping on our trampoline. Which are very good memories. We would always start out, we'd always go out there and, I would say, hey, do you want to tell a story? And then that was our cue to go out onto the trampoline, and we'd start jumping around and describing. Well, then the next step was we'd say future or past. And what that meant was basically sci-fi or fantasy. Now, I think we probably picked future like 1 out of every 100 times that we played. We were way more into the fantasy storytelling. But once we picked past, as we almost always did, we would then, set up the scenario. I'd say, oh, I'm a master fencer, and I run a fencing school, and this army is attacking my city, and I have to lead my students out to help fight off the army, or something like that. And then my brother would go, okay, yeah, I'm a hunter, I'm a master with a bow and arrow. And, I'm jumping around on the trees. He was a big Legolas guy. Who did you like in Lord of the Rings was kind of it's like a personality test, I feel like, at that age. If you were into fantasy, were you a Legolas guy, which my brother was. I was an Aragorn guy, and so my characters usually always had swords and were very kind of grizzled and had long hair and a beard and all that. But yeah, that would be the shape of our play sessions as kids. And then, of course, we also had all sorts of other stuff. The usual stuff that kids do. We had toys and Lego sets, of course. We were a pretty big Lego family. We had the massive tub full of spare Lego pieces. I'm sure if you played with Lego, you all had that yourselves. All of the sets, you get a set, and you build it, you follow the instructions, you build the set, and then over time, that Lego set kind of dissolves, who knows how it happens, but you have a fully built little Star Wars Lego set, and then you think, oh, I could really use a couple of those pieces to build my new, some spaceship that I want to make. So you pillage a couple of pieces, and then before long, the set is completely dismantled, and all of the pieces are deposited into a giant plastic tub that is just full of mixed and matched Lego pieces. No organization whatsoever. There's there's things that are like half built, there's pieces that are stuck together. Of course, there's those pieces, you know, the very thin bricks that you could just never separate. If those things were stuck together, it was impossible to detach them. You had to try to wedge a fingernail in there, and you know, eventually there were tools for that, but I don't think we ever had one of those. So there were some Lego pieces that were just permanent. They might as well have been glued together, because they never, ever, ever came apart. Alright, we are moving on to chapter 2 here. Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. Chapter 2, Escape from Echo Base. Imperial forces have mounted a relentless assault on the rebel base on Hoth. The rebel fighters have held out bravely, but the enemy is overwhelming. In the Echo Base command center, carved deep into the ice of the frozen planet, Han Solo and Princess Leia monitor the evacuation of rebel personnel. But as stormtroopers breach the outer defenses, they must quickly find an escape route for themselves. So, we have the shield generator finally destroyed by the AT-ATs. The assault on Hoth, led by the General Veers, Moff Veers, Grand Moff Veers. Forget his exact rank, he's probably a Moff. Has been successful. And now the rebels have to secure an escape route. So here I am playing as player 1, so I am Han, and my brother is playing as Leia. Yeah, that Lego bin, I imagine that's kind of a universal thing, right? You know, for kids that have Legos, you always end up with this massive mixed together stew of Lego pieces. Because that's the real fun of Lego, right? I mean, building the sets is awesome. And, just watching us kill each other. Building the sets is a lot of fun. And I think, obviously, as an adult, if you're still into Lego, that's kind of more that's probably the entirety of Lego, right? As an adult, I can't imagine you're, like, breaking down your sets. Well, I guess there's two kinds of Lego hobbyists, right? There's Lego hobbyists who buy the wildly overpriced Lego sets that come out these days, because now, as adults, they have disposable income, and the Lego Corporation is catering to them rather than families and children. But I do know that there are Lego hobbyists who also are kind of more creative and like to create stuff themselves. I see them online occasionally, making unique builds. But yeah, that big gumbo of Legos think is probably a classic experience for people if you grew up playing with Lego. So we have found C-3PO, and he can start opening doors for us. And this is actually reminding me that this exact spot here, this room, I told a story in one of my earlier Lego videos about playing with my cousin who did not have video games in his house, and he was sort of obsessed with them, and he came over to my house and we were playing Lego Star Wars, and it was this exact mission, this exact spot that I looked over and realized that he was like shaking and twitching, kind of vibrating as he was playing the game, that it was having such a, like, I don't know, just an extreme effect on him. And he, it was so extreme that he was digging his fingernails into the rubber joystick covers of the, the thumb pad joysticks, and was actually like carving chunks out of my controller, which I was not very happy about. And yeah, that memory came back because I'm remembering that this was that very exact room where I looked over and saw the sort of physical effect that playing the game was having on him. So, yeah, just have healthy relationships to stuff in your life, everybody. If you're tearing chunks out of a controller's thumb pads because your body is like having a mini seizure because of how excited you are to play a video game, you should probably try to figure out how to change that. But also, I get it. I mean, I know it's tough. Like, as a kid, you live in a world of video games, right? You know that they exist, but your parents don't allow them in your house, which was the case with him. I mean, obviously, you could be in a house that can't afford it, but I know his parents could. They just were opposed to video games, so I'm sure as a kid that is very unpleasant to be, aware of video games, and you know how much, like, fun they are. You probably talk to kids at school who have these games, and you just become more and more fixated on them. And so when you can finally actually get your hands on them and play them yourself, it probably, I understand why that would create a sort of extreme reaction. Alright, we have linked up with Chewbacca here. Chewie. The Han Solo movie, of course. Solo, a Star Wars story. What's your name? Chewbacca. That's too long. We're gonna have to come up with something shorter. And the crowd goes wild. Yo, now we know why Han calls Chewbacca Chewie. We got the lore, bro. Now we know. Sorry, I won't talk about that. I already ranted about that my earlier Lego Star Wars videos. Something with a large motor is passing my apartment. Trying to figure out if that is going to be a recurring noise, and I might have to pause recording, or if that was a one-time thing. This is not an airplane that I'm hearing, but I do live near an airfield, and people, I think, I don't know, for like getting there, probably getting in hours for their pilot's license or something, sometimes they will just circle above my apartment for many minutes at a time, just circling and circling and circling, so that that always prevents me from recording. I've had some recording sessions that I've had to scrap because a plane starts circling, and I'm like, all right, that's it for today. And the unfortunate thing is, usually my recording time is kind of heavily scheduled, in the sense that, you know, if I miss my window to record, I don't really get another chance that day. I don't have flexible time. There goes the Millennium Falcon, and Luke hops in his X-Wing. So, yeah, what was I saying? I got distracted by talking about planes or something. Whatever, let's read this opening crawl. Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. Chapter 3, A Falcon Flight. Led by the evil Darth Vader, Imperial forces have overrun the rebel base on the ice planet Hoth. Having briefly stalled the enemy advance, Luke Skywalker has made his escape by X-Wing fighter, and as the last rebel transports lift off from the planet, Han Solo, the Millennium Falcon, engages the Imperial ships above. I have been watching Season 2 of Andor, which I know that I am extremely late through the game on that one. It's been out for months. But when it came out, I just had a ton of stuff going on in my life, and I didn't really have time to watch the show. And well, kind of more to the point, you know, I might have been able to watch it, but I was very excited for Andor, and so I wanted to not just like gulp it down when I had a free hour, but really take my time to appreciate it and watch it when I was less stressed out. So that time has finally come, and I've been slowly working my way through it. I'm trying not to watch the episodes too quickly. I'm watching about like one a week, sometimes actually longer between. But I'm really enjoying it. I won't really talk about it too much, just because I haven't finished it yet, but that's one thing that I've been up to that is Star Wars related. Into the asteroid field, into the asteroid field. Never tell me the odds. I am playing, those episodes, and all of my LEGO episodes for the most part, pretty recklessly. I'm not trying very hard to get, like, true Jedi or anything. I'm not doing a ton of exploring. Mainly because I just want to, kind of appreciate, or I just want to focus on the story, right? Just enjoy, just like playing through the game itself. And so I have not been getting very many true Jedi scores, but I will say these vehicle levels, I always struggle with true Jedi more. Some of them, I don't know when this change happened, if this is from older LEGO games or newer ones, but there's some vehicle levels where if you destroy something, all of the studs are automatically collected. Like in the pod racer level of Phantom Menace, so maybe this is an older thing and they stopped doing it this way. But yeah, you like smash through stuff and all of the studs are automatically sucked up into your counter. But then you have levels like this where you still do have to walk by the studs, or fly by the studs in this case, to actually like magnetize the studs into your inventory. And I always, I find these levels a bit tricky to get true Jedi on. Usually they require, fewer studs to get true Jedi, so it's easier in that sense. But I always find it kind of tricky to collect them and to collect your hearts so that you're not losing studs as often. And of course you can collect the studs that you drop, but as you can see, they kind of spread out and it can be very easy to miss them. So the true Jedi on these levels is a bit tricky for me. Something fell in my apartment. What's happening? It's an earthquake. Everybody get under the beds. You can see here my brother is doing a lot better at the stud collecting than I am. He has like 10 times my amount of studs right now. He's a certified gamer. I'm just a poser. I'm a poser. So now we descend into the classic asteroid worm. The giant worm in the asteroid that our heroes take cover in. Of course, you get that Minoc jump scare on the windshield. Windshield. It's not the right word for a spaceship. What would you call that? I don't know. I'm blanking on an appropriate word for the windshield of a spaceship. But anyway, yeah, you have the classic worm here where they realize that they're in something alive and they fly out right as the worm's jaws close. So, we are just collecting these torpedoes. This is a kind of a common trope in these vehicle missions at this point, is finding torpedoes so that you can destroy purple targets, which are gating your progress forward in the mission. The vehicle levels are not my favorites in games. The, I don't know, the kind of floaty controls of them. I don't mind the ones where you're on sort of a track, like the pod racing mission in the Phantom Menace, where you're basically just being propelled forward down a racetrack, and you just have to, avoid the obstacles and hit the speed boosts and stuff. The vehicle levels where you have the freedom to kind of move around fully like this, I don't care for as much. And I think you'll see that in the Indiana Jones, Lego Indiana Jones 2 video that I made. Remember doing that one where you're on like a bike and you have to smash other cars and bikes on this in this sort of town area. You just have to chase them down and bump into them over and over again, and it's hard for me to get the angles right to propel into them with enough speed to actually hit them. There's another mission in the next episode 6, where you're on the speeder bikes on Endor, and I remember not caring for that one too much. Just finding it hard to hit the speeder bikes with my lasers. Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, Chapter 4, Dagobah. Han Solo and Princess Leia have finally evaded the Imperial fleet, the Millennium Falcon, and are on their way to Cloud City, secretly followed by the bounty hunter Boba Fett. Meanwhile, following instructions relayed to him by the spectral form of Obi-Wan Kenobi, Luke Skywalker has piloted his X-Wing to the forgotten planet of Dagobah. Accompanied by his trusty droid R2-D2, Luke heads towards the murky swamp world in search of his destiny. So, in Attack of the Clones, in my video on Attack of the Clones, I talked about how the mission on Camino, where one player has to play as Obi-Wan and one player has to play as R4, you kind of get the short end of the stick there if you have to play as R4. Well, now we actually get that same dynamic with another player, because for most of this mission, you're just Luke and R2, and so my brother was we were teasing each other about him having to play R2-D2. Well, I got to be Luke the whole time. But then we were joking about how, or he started saying he's an R2 main, and we were laughing about that, He's a top-ranked ELO R2 main in North America. But of course you do need R2 for some stuff here, because R2 can go into the swamp water, which will kill Luke. And so you need R2 to activate some various things around here. Now he's going for the mini kit here. There we go. There we go, my completionist brother. that's one less minikit we have to get on our 100% free play replay of all of these missions, right? And just keep dropping into the swamp water there. So, Dagobah, of course, we get our introduction to Yoda, the little Yoda puppet that started it all, and who would become such an iconic character in Star Wars. And it's funny to think about, you know, how he started, right? This kind of crazy, comedic old hermit in the swamp. And the different forms that Yoda has taken over the years. He is, you know, you compare Yoda in this to Yoda in the prequel movies, for instance, and he has a very different tone, a very different style, very different personality. Here he is. Here's our little ketamine frog himself. Now it's time for training. Oh my god, Yoda just killed Luke. He just killed Luke, bro. So now, we get our Yoda backpack, I think. Or maybe not yet. I think not yet. I think, at first we're just... Yeah, we have to follow him around for a bit. And then eventually he gets on our back. Also, these bats are no joke. Do not mess around with the bats. They will mess you up. Yeah, this is kind of a fun gimmick where you put Yoda on your back and then you get access to the Force. Because of course he is using the Force. But then you can lose him like that, so I think if you take damage or something. Not many return visits to Dagobah, right? In the Star Wars canon. Now, I've talked before about how Star Wars returns to its iconic location so much. You know, we've been to Tatooine in a million movies and shows and stuff at this point. But we don't get many trips to Dagobah. 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 I guess people are, they're not compelled by the barren swamp setting. More bats, more bats. When you have Yoda on your back, you actually have the vehicle health, right? How in when you're in vehicles in this game, they have the silver health bars. Build our little mushroom path for R2 to get up to the console over here. My brother was having a grand old time at this point. Alright, and with that intense training montage, Luke can himself. We are a fully fledged Jedi. And my brother's just pulling me along here. There's some goofiness that can happen with the shared screens of these early LEGO games. And eventually they introduced a sort of fluid transition from split screen to single screen play. And that kind of resolved that issue. I don't think I ever really played any of those games. By the time that they had made that innovation, I was not really playing the LEGO games anymore. But we have our, oh, not yet. I thought it was the beginning of our confrontation with Darth Vader, but not yet. Yeah, I have seen, though, they eventually innovated that sort of merging and separating the screen that you would get in some games, where if the players walked away from each other, you know, as you've seen in this, if the players walk away from each other, the players kind of a rubber band are forced towards each other. But eventually they made it so that you could walk away from each other and the screen would just seamlessly separate. And so that you didn't get that kind of forcible rubber banding aspect. Also, I remember at this point I was telling my brother, I was like, you can play as Yoda now. And this is what he was insisting. No, he's the highest ranked R2 main in North America, so he's not going to be switching to Yoda. So we have our Darth Vader fight here. Of course, in the movie, Luke goes into this cave and he sort of faces a vision of himself where he strikes down Darth Vader and he finds himself inside the suit. He is Darth Vader. And, that ties into some stuff that we discover later on in the film. A massive spoiler that I will not say. I wouldn't want to spoil Star Wars for anybody who hasn't seen it yet. You know, if they're like 40 years late to the party, that would be rude. But yeah, also just ties into the element of Luke's pull to the dark side. You know, there's an element of, could he become Darth Vader? If he gives in to the dark side, he could, right? So, yeah, that's of course part of episode 6, where he starts off in his black suit and he's using Force choke on Gamorrean guards and stuff, and it's like, oh man, did Luke go bad? And he didn't. He's a good kid. And of course we see the progression of his story in The Last Jedi, where he is a broken old man on an island. I don't really agree with how they did Luke in, well, Jedi was an okay vision of what might have happened to Luke. Because you can imagine him with Obi-Wan dead and Yoda dead. You know, he's kind of lost his mentors, his tutors, the people that could teach him what it means to be a Jedi. And obviously there's some discussions to be had about the Force ghosts. And could they have continued to teach him? So, that's a bit of a weird, I don't know, the Star Wars. That's like a hole that you have to fill in, I think, right? What happens to all of the potential teachers for Luke? Right, because after the prequels especially, we know that there's a Qui-Gon ghost, and an Obi-Wan ghost, and a Yoda ghost, and an Anakin ghost. And it starts to feel like, you know, why couldn't these guys just teach Luke? Spinny R2D2. Why couldn't these guys teach Luke what he needs to know about being a Jedi in their Force ghost form? And this has been kind of explained away at various points. I know, like, in the Thrawn trilogy, in the books, the original books, it starts off with Obi-Wan's ghost being like, "Hey Luke, I have to go now. We can't keep, like, having ghost lessons." So it kind of takes him out of the picture. Speaking of Force Ghost Obi-Wan there. But yeah, all of that is to say, there's a snaggle with, could the ghosts just teach Luke? But we will read this scroll before I keep yapping. So. Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. Chapter 5, Cloud City Trap. Barely a few weeks into his Jedi training with Yoda, Luke Skywalker has had a vision of his friends captured by Darth Vader. Against Yoda's advice, the impetuous young Jedi sets his X-Wing fighter on a course for Cloud City. Here he hopes to find Han Solo and Princess Leia, little guessing in his haste, that he himself is the true target of Vader's trap. So here we have another mission that tormented my brother with him being stuck playing as R2 while I played as Luke the entire time. I might have invited him to play the worst episode that I could have picked in terms of how good it is for playing multiplayer. But yeah, so, as I was saying, sorry, just getting distracted by the gameplay. The vision of Luke presented in The Last Jedi is, I think it's a plausible one, in the sense that Luke had lost his teachers. Again, we have to kind of ignore the Force Ghost stuff. It's an awkward, I mean, this is part of why I think it doesn't make a ton of sense, but the Last Jedi version of events. Because if Luke had been able to train with his Force Ghost teachers of Yoda and Obi-Wan and Anakin and Qui-Gon even, if that capability was there, you might imagine that he wouldn't fall into the traps that he does by The Last Jedi. But the aspect of Luke's character in The Last Jedi that I find somewhat plausible is the idea that he is a very young man who has been caught up in this incredible thing of becoming a Jedi, right? And he doesn't know how to deal with it, how to learn from it, what it means, how to handle that power and that responsibility. And then all of his masters die, and suddenly he has to figure it all out himself. And so in that situation, I can kind of understand why he might cling to, ancient Jedi texts as the, the source of... Also, we were laughing at these stormtroopers rubbing their asses after they get zapped by R2. I just thought it looked weird. The way that they're just slowly stroking down on their cheeks. Sorry. We were making a lot of jokes about it, and we were laughing pretty hard, but I will spare you the jokes that we were making because they were somewhat off color, and I'm trying to be chill for an ASMR video, so. But anyway, where was I? Yeah, so I can kind of understand the rationale for Luke becoming very orthodox and obsessed with these books, these old Jedi texts, because his mentors are gone, and all he has to rely on now are these old books. Now, there's a lot of weirdness with that, where did these books come from? I mean, we don't see them in the previous movies, and it's have these always been a guiding force for the Jedi Order? Or what are we supposed to believe about these books? Yoda clearly doesn't care for them. And that's weird too, the Force ghost of Yoda shows up in The Last Jedi to chastise Luke. But then that just raises the question of where has Yoda been this whole time, right? Where was Yoda when Kylo Ren was getting corrupted? So, those are just... I think it kind of makes sense, but it's also a little weird. And then, I think that interpretation of Luke just becomes increasingly impossible to believe. I'll drop some Mandalorian spoilers here for season 3 of The Mandalorian, I think, right? So, if you don't want to hear those, you can hop out now, but I think it's season 3 of The Mandalorian, we see how Luke is teaching Grogu. And Luke has taken Grogu to his the Jedi school that he's going to found. And he's starting to teach Grogu to become a Jedi. And what does Luke do? Someone is banging like crazy in my apartment. I'm gonna pause my recording okay? I will return to you when things have quieted down. Alright, everybody. I am back to finish the video. It has been a long day. The noise never stopped, so I am here at night to finish recording. And as soon as I finish, I am going straight to bed. I had a delicious dinner of leftover ramen. Went to a ramen restaurant recently with my family, and it was very good. But what were we talking about? We were talking about Luke. We were talking about Luke. We'd already addressed his last Jedi incarnation, and I believe I was just about to start talking about his Mandalorian incarnation, Season 3 in particular. So, what I wanted to say about that, my opinion about Mando Season 3's version of Luke, is it's really bad. He is, I mean, in a sense, I guess, you could see how it lines up with the Last Jedi version of Luke. Because if the Last Jedi is arguing that Luke became this ultra-orthodox, sort of letter of the law Jedi, then I guess Mando Season 3 sort of makes sense, but basically the characterization in The Mandalorian for Luke is that he's a hard-ass prick. He is just like, hey Grogu, you have to choose between your family and being a Jedi. And if you are not willing to completely give up your family, then you do not get to be a Jedi. And what's more, I'm not even going to train you. And of course, Grogu chooses to return to his family, the Mandalorian, Din Djarin. So, I'll talk about why I think that is an atrociously bad characterization for Luke. What do we know about Luke from the original trilogy? What are some of his defining characteristics? What is the pivotal moment of his character in the conclusion of the trilogy? What does he do? What makes Luke special? The answer to that, the core of Luke's character, is that at the end of Return of the Jedi, Luke does not give up on his father. For all, rational observers, Darth Vader would seem to be completely lost. There is no hope of redemption for Darth Vader. But Luke refuses to believe that his puts his own life on the line to prove that. He is willing to let himself be killed, basically. He is not going to raise his weapon to defend himself against Palpatine. He is begging his father to intervene to save him. He is begging his father to come back to the light. And why does Luke do that? The answer, of course, is because he loves his father. He loves his family. Luke lost Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, the only family he ever knew. He knows the value of family and friends. Think about in The Empire Strikes Back. Luke is training with Yoda, and Yoda says, "Your training isn't finished, you can't leave yet." But Luke has had a vision that his friends are in danger on Cloud City, of course we're seeing right now. And Luke does not hesitate. He prioritizes his friends over, the traditions of his training. I'll keep talking after we read this next title scroll. Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, Chapter 6, Betrayal over Bespin. Escaping from the rebel defeat on Hoth, Han Solo has sought a sanctuary on Cloud City, high above the planet Bespin. His old friend Lando Calrissian is now parent administrator of this self-governing colony, and Han hopes for a warm welcome. But in this time of galactic upheaval, nothing is as it seems. So, the Luke that we meet in the original trilogy, the Luke who we see have this journey over the course of those 3 movies. Time and time again, we see Luke choose love, choose his friends, choose his family. He doesn't care that Yoda says, if you want to be a Jedi, you have to stay and finish your training. Your connections are making you weak here. Luke says no. Family and friends, love, relationships, that is what is most important. And so, and of course that theme is finished, he doesn't change that core of his character. His belief in love does not change by the end of the trilogy, because he chooses to try to save his father. He doesn't seek to strike down through violence. He seeks to bring his father back to the light. And not in some weird, detached Jedi sense, but in the... Sorry, did you hear my stomach right there? That was a crazy noise. Not in a, Jedi Buddhist sense of like this universal Jedi love, a detached sort of love. He does it from the love of a son for his father, right? And so, to skip ahead a few years in The Mandalorian Season 3. And what do we find of Luke? We find that Luke is so strict in his adherence to traditional Jedi philosophy that he is unwilling to allow his first student to even have a connection with the one person that this student loves, this student's one family member. It is completely incompatible with the character that we met in the original movies. Now, obviously, characters can change, and it's not impossible that a character could have that 180. But there's no explanation for it, there's no justification for it. And with a character like Luke, that's not the kind of character that you should just say, oh, he changed off screen. If Luke is going to go through such a major personality and philosophy change like that, we should see it happen, because that's interesting, and also it's hard to just tell an audience, oh, this character that you know really well, actually off screen he became an entirely different person. That doesn't feel good. So, I sort of get why Mandalorian Season 3 would make Luke an insufferable prick if they were trying to match him up with the last Jedi version of Luke that we get. But I guess at the end of the day, I just don't think that they did it well. And sort of doubly so at the end of the day, I just disagree with that interpretation of Luke's character. I disagree with this idea that he would become this embittered, orthodox old man who had no room for, love in his heart, that was unwilling to train Padawans that could have relations with their oh my god. Sorry, not relations with their families. Relationships with their families, a very, very different thing. Sorry, I completely broke my train of thought with that one. Yeah, it just doesn't make sense that the Luke we know would not understand the value of his Padawans having relationships with their families. I mean, Luke has Leia, right? And she becomes a Jedi, and the two of them love each other. Like, none of this makes any sense. It's just, I don't know, there's two ways of approaching it, right? On the one hand, I sort of respect Rian Johnson for doing this bold, take on Luke. I kind of respect at least that they made a choice, right? The new trilogy has so many flaws. But I don't know, The Last Jedi has so many issues beyond that Luke choice. It's just not really a very good movie. Anyways, you have all that whole plot line with Finn and the casino planet and the hacker. It's really bad. But yeah, so there's two aspects of it, right? I don't agree with the way that they took the character. That's not how I would have done it. I don't think it makes sense based on the existing evidence, but also, that's art, right? It's sometimes artists have different interpretations, and it's not wrong per se to have a different interpretation, right? That's just how things go. So but then the other side of it is it actually done well? And in The Last Jedi, I think Luke is done okay. Part of that I think is because Mark Hamill does a great job selling the transformation. It's a tricky change to make, but I think Mark Hamill performs the character very well and believably. But yeah, I guess those are my thoughts about modern Luke. I guess we can just say that I much prefer Legends Luke. I much prefer Luke running around with Mara Jade than I prefer this weird asshole Luke who won't even let a little baby see his dad. Just makes no sense to me. But yeah, those are my Luke thoughts, I guess. So. Sorry, yawning, recording late at night, as I said, so I am quite tired at this point. But yeah, what should we talk about for the rest of the video? I've done my usual Star Wars ranting, which these Lego Star Wars videos have kind of become the means by which I just bombard you all with my Star Wars opinions. I've been reviewing all these Star Wars movies and shows, and I'm talking about my feelings about Star Wars and modern Star Wars and yada yada yada. So I hope you at least find that a little interesting if you also feel very strongly about Star Wars. If you have a history with Star Wars. Even if you disagree with some of what I've said, I hope it's interesting to you at least. I know there's a lot of different feelings about Star Wars out there, and a lot of the stuff in the Disney era is pretty controversial, so I've definitely come down pretty negative on it all, but I know some people appreciate it more. I do feel like Rise of Skywalker is sort of universally hated though, right? We're all on the same page that movie is dog shit, right? So we are wrapping up here in Cloud City, trying to chase down Boba Fett as he flees with Han Solo all frozen in carbonite. And we saw Boba Fett escape on Slave 1, so Now we head to the Millennium Falcon. The Millennium Falcon. Oh boy, sorry. Sleepy. I've been to I went to Disney World some years ago at this point, and visited Star Wars World. What do they call it? What is the name of that? They have like a planet that they made up for it. All I can think of is the location is like Black Rock Outpost or something, I think. I can't remember the planet name, but I'm too tired. But yeah, they have a Millennium Falcon ride, which I gotta say, I will fully admit that I was going full, like, child Star Wars fanboy weirdo. I was losing it, man. To get to the ride, you, like, walk into the Millennium Falcon, basically, into this sort of interior, and you're in the space. You're in the ship, you're, like, in the hallways, and in that little recreation room, or the room with the chessboard, and I was losing it when I walked through that place. I was like, oh my god, I'm in the Millennium Falcon. I'm in the Millennium Falcon life size, you know. It's real. It's real. So that was a cool moment. I just fully gave into my my inner child there. But the ride itself was pretty cool. You pilot the Millennium Falcon on this little mission, on like a little heist mission, led by Hondo Onaka. Hondo Onaka, my friend. This is a funny little bit there. Oh, these Lego games. Very funny, very funny. Alright, well, that is the end of episode 5. Episode 5 is over. And my brother is creeping around. So I hope that you enjoyed. As usual, I'll go spend our studs. I'm ending up with a lot fewer studs in these original trilogy missions than I am from the prequels. But let's see who we'll buy. We're going to buy. Han Solo, Rebel Pilot. We'll just buy a bunch of random people, I guess. I hope that you enjoyed this Lego episode. I hope it was a fun novelty to see me play with my brother, play multiplayer, which was a rare treat, obviously. It was the first time that happened. And you know, if you really enjoyed that, I might be able to convince him to come back so I can play some more multiplayer. We'll see how schedules align. But until next time, my friends, thank you for joining me. Please take care of yourselves, and I will do the same. Goodbye.